My guest today is Dr. Ryan Williamson. Ryan is a board-certified neurologist, proud Navy veteran, and the owner and founder of Transcend Health. After separating from the military, Ryan ultimately dedicated his career to improving brain health and cognitive performance and to helping individuals expand their longevity. Through Transcend Health, he empowers leaders and individuals to optimize their cognitive performance, through evidence-based strategies that address brain fog, improving memory, and helping them overcome cognitive overload and improve their longevity. So, Ryan, thanks so much for joining me today.
So happy to be here, Diane. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here. And it's so funny because I had said to you before we even started doing this, I was feeling a little foggy. And what I meant was that I felt like my video looked hazy, but brain fog could have been the same thing. So here's my first question for you. What is the number one thing business owners can do to improve their revenue?
Man, number one, there are a whole bunch of things for what that's worth, but and I guess when I say a whole bunch of things, there are a whole bunch of strategies that all point back to kind of the number one thing,
Okay.
and that is optimizing your brain health, period.
Okay. So tell me more about that. Like, how do we do that?
Yes. So to state the obvious, and I mean, I think this bears a maybe a minute on a 30,000 foot view here, but without our brain and without how we understanding how our minds work and how we process information, we can't really do much of anything. And I think it's important because most people also don't realize that they're not operating at peak capacity when in fact they're probably operating at 50, 60%. And our brains are really, really good at telling us that everything's okay when in fact it's not. And we might need a break or a reset, maybe better sleep, something like this. So that's kind of the stage I want to set. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view, and to really capture all of that, there are really four techniques or four categories of things I like to tell people that I call kind of the core four,
Okay.
and that's optimizing movement, sleep, nutrition, and stress management. And they're offshoots of each of those again, but I look at these as kind of foundational pillars for what we all should be doing to optimize our cognitive performance and our health, which again, in turn, optimizes business revenue. To get back to your question, Diane, because running at full speed, the business can't, by definition, run at full speed because you're not bringing your best self to the table.
Right. Exactly. Okay. You said something earlier about um, what I heard was we think we're operating at a high level when really we're not. So my question is, so then how do should we just assume we're not? Like, how do we know?
Yeah, yeah, that's a wonderful question. So when we look at the data, and that's everything I do, I try to have as data driven an approach as I can. This kind of core four gets back to 70 to 90% of all of our health outcomes are within our control, meaning they're lifestyle based. So
Okay.
that's where those numbers and kind of some of those statistics come from. When we look at the cognitive performance, if you look at just a survey of Americans, at least 50% of Americans report feeling stress every day of some sort. And when I say stress, I mean not operating at our best, number one. Number two, 75% of us, so three-quarters of us, report feeling stress sometime in the last month. And Diane, those are just the people that are even aware of it or that are willing to admit it. So while I can't put a hard number on that because it really is kind of hard to ascertain, my clinical experience and my suspicion is more in line with numbers probably being most of us. So I would just operate at a base level assumption that most of us are not operating at peak capacity.
That's a great assumption. So, and you had said, sleep, stress, movement,
Mhm.
and diet, nutrition,
Got
right?
it.
All
Yep.
right, so let's talk about sleep.
Yes.
How do we, because I think it feels to me like one of the hazards of being a small business owner is your brain does not stop running. So for many people, it can be hard to get to sleep. And for others, they fall asleep eventually, but then they wake up and then their brain just keeps. So what do we do to optimize our sleep so that it has a positive impact on our business?
Absolutely. And I love starting with sleep because it's one that we all do and we don't really have to think about. I mean, you do have to put a little bit of thought into the other three. So this is probably the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to actually moving the needle on your health. I'd be happy, first off, I have a sleep protocol that I'd be happy to give your audience for free. So that's probably the easiest way that we could go into specifics. So happy to share that as a resource.
Right.
Um, but the idea is that I like to teach people how to create a framework around healthy sleep habits. And again, this is something that we just sort of fall into and don't realize. But, here we are communicating halfway across the country through artificial light and screens. And I mean, electricity in many ways has made our lives so much better. But when it comes to our brains, our brains aren't designed our brain wasn't designed when electricity was a thing, right? And the reason I say that is because light is like the master regulator for almost every cellular rhythm in your body. And it might sound strange, but light gets into your eyes and it projects to a part of your brain called your hypothalamus, which is kind of a mouthful. But that's sort of the master control switch for all these other systems that then send different signaling molecules to your heart or your gut or your muscles or different places. And it helps regulate when your body wants to be awake and whether or not you are going to achieve quality sleep. And when we sit in bed and we stare at screens or iPads or phones or perhaps do podcasts late or whatever we're looking at, that light actually tricks our brain into thinking that it's daytime, and it impairs the release of a critical hormone called melatonin that you need to actually fall asleep. And believe it or not, even looking at a screen, say, I don't know, an hour or two before bedtime can delay melatonin release up to 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
And chronically over time, this has a major impact on shifting when you feel sleepy, being groggy the next morning, the next day, because it throws off what's called our circadian rhythm, which is this kind
Yeah.
of natural rhythm I'm talking about. So that, I mean, that alone, just being respectful of the light balance, number one, by avoiding screens at night. But number two, and equally important, is being intentional about getting outside within the first hour of the day and exposing yourself to bright light to help prime that rhythm. So kind of thinking about it on both ends of that spectrum is a really easy pickup that I think a lot of people just don't know to do.
Okay. So when you say getting out and getting bright light, is it any kind of light? Because like when I wake up, it's dark out. So
The,
most of
great
the
point. Yep, that's a great point. So this that we're all kind of wired differently in terms of when we wake up. Like you, I'm also an early riser, so it is usually dark when I wake up. So if you're in that situation, but let me back up. If it is light outside because the sun's up, the sun is your best source. That's easy. And if you wake up in the dark like we do, or like many entrepreneurs do that are getting after it, trying to get to their business every day or work on their business every day,
yeah.
you want to mimic that same full spectrum light, or white light is the other term for it, that has all the different colors of the sun. And they're actually devices you can buy. There's some that are really cheap on like Amazon for like $20. But the dose that you want to look for, or the qualification is 10,000 lux. So the number 10,000, then LUX. And that's basically a signal intensity that light into your eyes that helps set that hypothalamus and that circadian rhythm. So
Wow.
easy pickup. I mean, for
Yeah.
that's and you've got to spend about 15 to 30 minutes in front of one of those if you're going to do it through the artificial means. Whereas
Okay.
if you're outside just getting early sun exposure, that's probably closer to 15, 20 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
Yep. Outsized return for a very easy investment while you're just sitting there waking up, just kind of doing your morning routine. So
Yeah,
really easy
right.
pickup.
Right. And you just have it there
That's
in
yeah,
in your
exactly.
in your
Yep.
space, right?
Yep. So like when I wake up, as I'm reading and kind of, getting my day started, I'm going to do some reflection. I try to do some gratitude, sort of prime my intention for the day. And
Yeah.
while I'm going through all of that, as coffee's brewing, I'm taking the dogs outside, whatever I'm doing, as long as I'm sitting still, I have that light shining in my eyes to help wake me up, and it
Okay.
makes a huge difference. I mean, number one, it really does help improve alertness, focus, and performance in the daytime. But another neat thing about light is that it also projects to a different area of the brain that helps regulate mood. So another massive pickup is you actually get a free mood boost out of this over time, which is pretty cool.
No
So,
kidding.
yeah, people may have in your audience may have heard of a condition called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. So SAD as the acronym goes. So
Sure.
imagine someone feeling kind of sad in the dark or in the wintertime, especially people that live in more northern or southern latitudes that have really extreme variations in sunlight throughout the year. This can really impact people's not only their wellness. But again, their business performance too, because if your mood is not appropriately regulated, I mean, if for anybody that's ever felt any even inkling of a symptom like that, or just felt sad about anything, imagine that being your baseline every day. It's pretty
Yeah.
it's pretty terrible. Not to mention it's going to hurt your business performance. Um,
Exactly.
so for just 20 or 30 minutes of light in the morning, while you're waking up, that's a pretty easy fix for most
No
people.
kidding.
Yeah.
I just figured out what I'm getting a couple of people for Christmas.
There you
So
go.
people I can think of, myself included. Okay, so now talk to me about stress because I feel like, moving your body. Okay, we all know we're supposed to do that, right? And like we have watches that tell us get up, start
Yes.
moving, and diet. Okay, but stress feels like one of those things that I think sometimes we don't even realize how stressed we are. And so how do we deal with that? Or how do I want to ask this question? Is there a way that we can just say, listen, I don't know whether I'm stressed or not, but here's an activity that I'm going to do daily or, whatever to sort of keep it at bay so I don't have to worry about whether I'm stressed? I know it's a weird question, but
No, that's a great question. And again, back to, our sort of fun discussion a minute ago about how many people just don't realize that they're stressed, which is true, I think. And even of the people that do, it's still a majority, however you look at it. One of my favorite parts about stress management is that when we look at the core four, if you're achieving adequate sleep, if you are prioritizing movement every day, and you are eating the right stuff and the right amount at the right time, that already gets you most of the way there when it comes to actual stress management. So
huh.
these things all do feed into one another, believe it or not. And if you want a counterexample of that, think about how maybe edgy or how grouchy or underperforming you might feel if you don't sleep well. And you wake up and try to function, pretty stressful and not fun to deal with. And again, this isn't just a subjective feeling. There's a reason for this on a physiological level in
Yeah.
terms of how our body works. But when you are under constant or chronic stress, you're back to that kind of circadian rhythm and the light, rhythms, all this stuff. There's a hormone called cortisol that gets a bad rap because when that's elevated for too long or it's not regulated properly, that's when we see symptoms of stress or we see elevated cortisol as a kind of a response to external or excess stress. We actually need cortisol to help wake us up and get our heart rate and our blood pressure going, help set the tone for the day, and that light actually is important in regulating that rhythm. But in either case, when cortisol is too high for too long, our performance suffers, and we see effects of this, measurable effects in the brain and the body. And for was one of these examples, when cortisol stays too high for too long, our what's called our prefrontal cortex. So this is the frontmost part of your brain, right behind your skull here, which is responsible for our higher order functioning and planning, goal-directed behavior. I kind of like to call it the CEO of the brain because that's really as an entrepreneur, that's where you are operating at your highest and best.
Okay.
If you are suffering from chronic stress, Diane, that part of your brain shrinks from too much cortisol. So the connections between the neurons actually wither and they go away, and the cell layer itself actually shrinks in response to this.
Wow.
So not only are you robbed of performance and therefore revenue and everything business related in the moment, but over time, your brain is actually rewiring itself to anticipate more stress in the future. And it essentially directs resources towards your fear center, which is called your amygdala.
Yeah.
And that puts you in this chronic fight or flight activated mode where you react to everything. And the way that I like to phrase this, I call this kind of people ending up like a pinball in a machine. They just sort of bounce from one crisis to the next, and they're again all those higher order functions are minimized. And when we think about maintaining an effective body and mind to effectively manage a business, to grow revenue and hire employees and make important high level decisions, if you are succumbing to chronic stress, this is a major problem that has serious implications for your immediate and even your long term health. So I just wanted to set that stage again to sort of explain
Yeah.
the what and the how behind this. And again, remember that movement, sleep, and of course proper nutrition help reset and strengthen those connections. But what else does that? Well, a handful of things. For anybody in your audience who likes to meditate, any kind of guided meditation or mindfulness actually helps strengthen connections in the prefrontal cortex, which again, the kind of that, I guess that's the bad news is sort of this rewiring that takes place in the wrong direction. The good news is that with these other techniques, your brain can go the other way and it can actually
Okay.
rewire to the positive. So this works in both directions, which is kind of nice. Actually, it's really
Yes.
nice. It's convenient that we can sort of exercise this part of our brain.
Yeah.
And so mindfulness, meditation, those are two ways to do this. Believe it or not, journaling can be a highly effective task. Um, Spending time with loved ones, so creating sort of a bonding experience, and quality relationships, healthy attachments that can actually strengthen this. There's a whole list of things people can do, but those are kind of a few easy ones that I think people have maybe heard of or that can implement. Uh, it, and again, we think about investment for return. I mean,
Yeah.
in my mind, these are outsized returns for a very small, simple investment. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
because we all have limited time, and a big challenge I deal with when I'm coaching entrepreneurs and CEOs and people that I work with
Yeah.
is that the last thing they need is one more thing to do or to add to their to-do list. And I have to again frame that and deconstruct it a little bit because I go, Ryan, like I'm busy. I'm running. Can't you see I'm running a business over here? And I go, yes, I get it. But if you hear me out, if we can just take a step back and intentionally plan for some of these things and start that rewiring process, man, the space that you open up to create for so much more higher level thinking and
Yeah.
success, it's just, I mean, it's I'd say mind blowing. That's probably too punny, but but it's effective. I'll say that.
And I love it because really what you're saying is when you do these things and you lower that stress level and your cognitive ability increases, you're able to run your business on a higher level, which technically makes it easier, right? Because a lot of the struggles we have, I think, are because of all these other things that are going on. We're just making it harder on ourselves when we could be making it easier.
You hit the nail on the head. And a concept that I really want everybody in your audience to understand is that our habits compound. And it can feel like we're just treading water, and overcoming that initial bit of inertia is the hardest part to getting any of this done. But once you do, I mean, say again, you optimize your sleep routine and you're waking up regularly feeling like you're recharged, you're reclaiming your morning, you're getting that morning light, or you got your little $20 Amazon device or whatever, and you're like, wow, like I've got so much more bandwidth and mental energy back that you can then do your highest and best work and focus on that.
Right.
That translates to better business performance,
Yeah.
better outcomes. That translates to better revenue. That translates. I mean, so you can see how this scales up the right direction and
Yeah.
literally in a compound, kind of fashion, and it doesn't take that much time to do that. Whereas if we go the other direction, which is where I think a lot of people are just stuck and don't realize it,
Absolutely.
they're fragmented and they're dedicating resources to plugging all the leaks when really it's just one or two simple, easy fixes that create the momentum to get you moving the other direction.
Yeah. I love this. And as you were talking about like the whole stress part of it too, what kept coming into my head was, and people who are highly stressed and whose brain then goes to that fight or flight thing are terrible leaders.
Mm.
Really ineffective because they're always reactive instead of responsive. And so this for me is part of being a better leader is being able to think more clearly, calmly, and then you get better results from other people.
I couldn't agree more. I was in the Navy for about 12 years and had the privilege of working with some of our special forces operators and so the Marines in particular, where I spent most of my time at Camp Lejeune. Our Marine Corps Special Forces are called MARSOC, and so these guys are literally trained to maintain that higher level function in the middle
Wow.
of literally a life-threatening situation. I mean, it doesn't get more stressful than combat, but through mindfulness techniques, through breathing techniques, obviously through immense physical fitness and physical training and combat training, all of this, they're able to stay there in the
Wow.
middle of, I mean, of the worst situations imaginable. And it's interesting, even in observing these people, when I used to see them in clinic, I mean, even if they'd come in out of uniform or just in civilian clothes, you can pick them out from across the room because they look so much different than everybody. And I don't mean just their stature or their physical appearance, because every Marine's, just a giant
Yeah.
muscular person and they're very fit, but it's their demeanor and it's
Mm,
their aura and the way they carry themselves. They're very calm, they're very observant. And again, this is I mean, it's a selected for and also a trained behavior, which is really interesting to watch. So there's a lot to learn about physiology through what our special forces go through. But the analogy for business owners is that it might feel like a war zone in the office, and literally your brain doesn't know the difference. That's
yeah.
the other, I think, thing that people to validate anyone that's going through this terrible stressful kind of existence. Your brain doesn't know when that fight or flight system gets activated. I mean, that was there to protect our ancestors from getting mauled by a lion, or to fight off an invading tribe or something like this.
Right.
But now it could be just a cash flow problem or an email. I mean, and it triggers the same system. And so the environment's changed, or maybe the battlefield's changed, or whatever analogy you want to use. And so we've got to learn how to manage the system.
Right. Right. Exactly. Oh, I'm going to be walking the dog after this conversation. So, you're so lucky. So this is so great, Ryan. I love all this information. I'm, taking notes. This is so valuable for so many reasons. Thank you so much for joining me. Will you tell the listeners how they can find you and your book and, all the stuff, please?
Absolutely. Well, first off, Diane, thank you for having me. I mean that. I'm just genuinely pleased to be here. Um, but if anybody wants to learn more about what I do, you can go to transcendhealthgroup.com. Again, we can hand that link over or post it. And if you go to the homepage, that you'll be able to navigate to the book tab, which should be right across the top there. But if not, you want to type it in, it's transcendhealthgroup.com/book. Hopefully that's easy. But my book, The Incredible Brain, will be out September 9th. My mission is to help people live longer, healthy. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, those are the two big resources for people. And then you can that links out to social media and everything else as well.
excellent. So great. Well, as I said, thank you so much. And listeners, thank you. You are who we're doing this for.